think it was back in 2007. Several of us were at AVSI Strategic Offsite Planning meeting. And at that point, it was obvious to us that we needed to start moving from a defense-centric type use of unmanned systems into civil and commercial applications. So a number of us sat around the table and said, okay, what are we going to do? What's the most important thing that we can get in there and really make a difference? And we decided to look into wildfire fighting. AVSI put some money aside to put together a series of, over a set of 3 years, I think 2009, 10, and 11, if I'm not mistaken, putting money aside to do tabletop exercises, eventually building up to having tabletop exercise, as well as flying some UAS to detect heat signatures that were representative of fires, and then finally flying on some prescribed burns with UAS. So when it came time to, okay, who is it that we're going to get to help us do all of this stuff? Because remember, we're technologists, we're people that fly airplanes. We need to reach out to the experts, as we've been doing here on this panel, the people that actually know the business of what it is we're trying to sense and what it is we're trying to do with these systems. We reached out to Tom Zukowski, and Tom came aboard and helped us put the first tabletop exercise together out in 2009 at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, where we took a critical look at the 2008 Big Sur fire. The following year, I put together combined a tabletop exercise and flight demonstration at Dugway Proving Ground. And then the final year, we brought Tom down here to Florida, where he did an actual exercise out at Eglin Air Force Base on prescribed burns. So Tom's a true professional and expert in this area, and we're very privileged to have him. Some of his background. Tom currently is the Flight Operations Manager for the Next Generation Transportation Center at the Institute for Transportation, Education, and Research at North Carolina State University. His duties include overseeing university-sponsored flight operations and as a liaison with other university departments to optimize UAS applications. Previously, he was employed at the United States Forest Service Remote Sensing Application Center in Salt Lake City as a remote sensing specialist. He supported numerous UAS data collection projects, working with NASA, Department of Interior, Department of Defense, state emergency management agencies, and universities. Tom has served as a liaison to NASA for the Wildfire Research Applications Project, which has successfully flown large UAS, including the Altair and Icona, over large wildfires in the western United States. He has also helped coordinate the use of multiple UAS for scientific data collection during the prescribed burn campaign at Eglin Air Force Base that I mentioned. Please join me in welcoming Tom Zukowski.
Hey, thanks for having me. I know I basically specialize in fire, but I'm going to try to broaden it to emergency management because a lot of the lessons we learned in those tabletop exercise, they're applicable to these types of these other applications. Quick overview, I am from North Carolina State University, the NGAT Center, and we're kind of like the focus group for UAS within North Carolina. A lot of the same kind of things you guys are doing here. And like my bio, it's like I have done a lot of work down here in Florida. Right now we have 15 COAs at 6 different locations with 10 different aircraft. And they keep wanting me to file more. And so we are actually looking at ways of getting larger COAs, more comprehensive statewide COAs like North. Instead of me, I was telling the Mark at the UAV program office is like, well, they want me to file 29 COAs for each one of our research stations. How would you like to do this? So things are moving along, but it is getting access to airspace. I can say we are flying every week, except for last week. We got weathered out, but we have flown every week since then. It's not long hours. We don't get 1,000 hours in a week. It's each flight's about 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and we actually have found that most of the work we're doing we can accomplish in that time period. There's really no reason why we're up for a mission-related issue. So where is UAS have been, are being used all over the place. I don't think it's not like business where it's a race to get to just to have them in public safety. It's something that we got to do correctly. There, actually it's interesting that, the reports that have just come out, the public opinions actually kind of flip between who they trust with UAS. It used to be people didn't trust the police, they trusted the average citizen, but over several issues, it's like it seems that that's flip-flop now. But what we need to do is to keep that trust and to integrate these in properly, to have them with the right kind of missions, have the right safeguards in place, and make them useful. It can't be just another shiny object in the sky. It's like, why are you doing this? Are you saving lives? Are you saving money? Or are you getting better data? These things are moving forward. There's a number of police departments that are looking at these, especially down here in Florida and in Texas. Utah's been using UAS for a while, the Highway Patrol there. And like even with JC, I mean, you can say that's an emergency management situation in some of these cases. And also the Department of Interior will be flying prescribed fires throughout in the western U.S. now. So not just like we've done in our test cases where we're actually flying in restricted airspace. They're actually going to go out and fly under their MOU. And something we're going to be doing is at North Carolina is we're actually flying a Nature Conservancy prescribed fire. We have a co out there to do that this spring, fall, once the snow melts. So just to we'll go back into fire, but a lot of these things are it's like, well, you have to look at what is your mission, is like, why am I doing this? This is back from a thing we did in 2003, but they're still pretty applicable. It's like you need to look at why are you using this and work with the teams that are out there on what they want. I mean, one of the things the military saw once UAS got introduced is that they kind of had NavAir and all the eggheads in these various think tanks had an idea of how they're going to use UAS. And especially with the Ravens and the Shadows, where when you gave them to the troops were like, well, that's not a very good idea. But we know how to use them. And you want to get them involved and utilize them. And we've seen this in fire as well, is like you got to work with the people before the emergency. It's like you need to figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to implement this, and how they are going to operate. One of the things that would come up with is like this, this safety risk reduction, where we've actually had, like, we've done this with the Predators, the DHS Predators, over an actual fire in Arizona. One of the things we found out is the teams, even though they had about 1,500 people on the team, they had no one who could sit down and watch video. It's like you can produce the greatest video and have it all over the place. They didn't have someone that could actually watch the video. They weren't set up to do that. Their whole concept of how they would ingest information comes from nightly flights that they get from NIROPS, and they would update their maps. There is no kind of like this thing where people are constantly updating their maps. It's really, they're kind of feeding, they reset things, and if something happens, they're used to getting a radio call, and then they might make a small tactical adjustment. But there's no way of people are actually like looking down at video, or there's a way of disseminating that video and updating the maps in real time. They just are not set up for that. And so you need to work with the teams on, in those cases, there was actually a group of us using the big pipe system that DHS has, that we would be watching the videos in shift, and then we would be in contact with the situation unit leader. And we did do something where we spotted a fire that was started by a group of people who are trying to protect their own property, and they ended up starting they started a fire that destroyed other people's property. But we were able to contact the incident command team, and they were able to deploy people to stop that fire before it destroyed any houses. But those are the sort of things. It's just not the technology in this airspace. In these things, it's like you're going to have to work through cultural differences, and because a lot of times it's like, we've caught burglars, we've stopped fire without UAS. Why do I need a UAS? You're always going to run into that, but you need to find champions. You need to work with them, and with all things is like, I have to reiterate this, is like you want to practice with the people before you get to the big emergencies. Every time we have, you have Katrina or you have the large wildfires in the Southern California, that's not the time to introduce something new into an incident, because they just aren't able to deal with it. They just kind of give you a blank look, and if it's not putting out the fire or stop something, that they just can't deal with it. When we talked about the Wildfire Research Application Project, we're flying the Icona. What had happened was we had flown a number of times throughout the western U.S. It was we flew all of the western U.S. states, CONUS, during that time period, and we would always send someone out to that team to help them work with the data. So when they had in 2008, when they had the big firestorms, we went out, we flew with them, but we had teams we had worked with. They knew what the data was. We had a method in place where they could go grab our imagery and then integrate it into their work plans. I mean, at the time when we first went out in 2006, it was the Esperanza fire. CAL FIRE couldn't even integrate. Their laptops, they could not upload Google Earth. They were like, you just can't do that. So it's like we had this thing, oh, you're just gonna use Google Earth and look at it. It's like, well, no, we're not, because we don't have that. But those are sort of things that you need to have these things in place to make UAS work. It can't be, look at this new thing, and you guys show them why you need this, but better yet, you'll probably find people within these communities that they understand why they need it. And you want to get them as your cheerleader, as your, to help you integrate into the community, as it were. And, this is going back onto, just because, if you want to integrate something into a large incident, this is for the wildfire traffic area that is used over large incidents, you can see a lot of the airspace is already spoken for. So you need to be able to, where are you going to fit your UAS into this operation? Because they've been doing this for decades now, and it's kind of like you're coming in with, oh, we're going to throw one more wrinkle into this operation. As you can see there, it's like the tankers will go down to 200 feet during their drops. You have helicopters that are flying even lower than that. I mean, so everybody is all over the place, and you have to be able to communicate with everybody. And so some of the 500 AGL that we might get with the new NPRM might not help in certain situations. And then, oh, by the way, even if you have a TFR, and a lot of times you will have a TFR, there are two different kinds of TFRs. There's like the presidential TFR, which sterilizes the airspace, and then there's the TFR everybody else gets, that law enforcement can fly in, accredited media can fly in there. On some of our really large TFRs, the public can actually fly in. If your aircraft is based at an airport, there's still a lot of management to go through. It's like you don't have this sterile airspace you are flying in. And then kind of the last thing is like, this is what I want to really talk about is like there's a path to getting a program together. So in emergency management, it's just not about the data. It's like, how are you going to, the first thing is to get your support. And then you got to do your research. What kind of airplane? That previous slide where are your missions? What are the missions you're going for initially? I mean, it could change, and then you need to develop an integration plan. And that's where you do the training. That's where you've worked with this crew several times on getting these things out. And then, then you're talking about funding and in more training. It's just one of those things that we've seen is like going, you need to be like a very well-oiled machine once you get out on an incident. They don't have the ability to teach you while you're out there. A lot of these times where we were out flying, you could tell the teams that had flown a lot, they could do things within a reasonable time period. A lot of some of the university type people or people who are just starting out, they took too long to get their aircraft up in the air, too long to get the data, and that's fine in a test case, but it's not going to work on an incident. It's just you're actually going to set yourself back a time period, because even when the Forest Service went in it, they have an operational group called the National Infrared Operations Program, and so they fly every night, and it's like hundreds of missions, hundreds of hours, and what the people actually remember is the one time they got UTF, where unable to fill, which is usually weather, or the one time where the data wasn't quite up to snuff. And it doesn't happen often, but they always remember the bad time. It's like, which I guess is good in a program where you're always expected, well, this is right, or this is correct. And then there is still probably, we're talking about the NPRM, and there might be a lot of missions where you can use UAS, and you're not going to have the same amount of getting a COA or something, but like one of the missions we're looking at with JC is they want to do the fire meteorologists. There's actually meteorologists they do spot weather forecasts basically for an incident, and they want to do mixing heights. And right now it's an estimated, it's estimated, and that everybody has kind of their own way of estimating it, but there's no real method of knowing that it works. And so we want to use UAS to actually figure that out. We can actually go up, send a UAS, and we can measure that. But that's going to take going up to 1,500 feet. So there's still going to be COAs for certain missions. If you're going to be doing comms relay missions, you're still going to be doing a COA or an MOU or something else. And then finally, it's like in large organizations like CAL FIRE or the Forest Service or even municipal fire departments, they're going to have their own rules and bureaucracy that you are going to have to integrate in. One of the things I found in the Forest Service is it's easier to deal with the FAA than it was to deal with fire and aviation. And so it's like, it's kind of scary, but it's like they have their method of doing things, and you're kind of like, back to JC, it's like you're talking guys who are dealing with manned aircraft, and you're changing the game on them. So that's something that you always need to look at. And then finally is starting flight ops, and you want to do the easy missions first, or the easier missions first, and get those under your belt. Get that time in. It's like being a low time. When you're a student pilot or a private pilot and you're first starting out, you need to fly every day, or every couple days, and then every week, and then once you get 6,000 or 10,000, whatever JC has, you can fly every once in a while, and you're still proficient. But these are the sort of things that we are going to need for any kind of emergency management. It's like when you show up for a hostage incident, when you show up for a hurricane, it better work. You can't be sitting around messing with your machinery. And that's already happened. 2008, they still talk about this. There's a group who tried to come out and fly, and it was one thing after another. It was like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So first of all, it was as a CAL FIRE incident, and Sacramento, the guys in the headquarters told a team that you're going to use this UAS. We want to try it out. The governor wants to see this up. Well, that team was actually managing 3 fires at that time. It was over 100,000 acres. And so they're like, why are we doing this? You know, it's like, how is this gonna help me? And then the FAA came in and said, okay, you can do this, but you can't have any other aircraft in the air except for the air attack, who's basically the air traffic controller. And so and then it was like finding a place to fly. And then at the end, it was that the crew had trouble getting the UAS ready, and then they ran out of duty time. So they spun everybody up, and then no one flew. I still run into CAL FIRE people, and they still tell me about that. You cannot do that sort of thing. It is like you do not want to come and do that. That is not what you need to be doing. You need to practice, work with the team, do training exercises, do simulations, and before you get out there. So when you get out there, you are like a NASCAR team, and the car comes in, you go and you get it up. So that is my talk for now. Now I guess we'll take more questions. So.
All right, thanks, Tom.